Welcome to the podcast, a place where we share the truth about food and farming from our kitchen to yours. I'm your host, Liz Hazelmeyer, along with my husband, Joey.
Good morning.
And together we hope to educate, inspire, and equip you in your pursuit of true nourishment. Today we are sitting down with Eric of the beloved Instagram account Girl Dad. Eric is a husband, a homeschooling father to 2 girls, and a passionate advocate for loving ladies in our lives well, and a breaker of generational curses, or as Eric says, shaking off the dust of old habits. Today we're going to be talking about parenthood, marriage, family life, and more. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here, you guys. That was a great wrap up. Made me sound like pretty legit.
Yeah, you are legit. No, we're so excited to bring you on. I've been following your Instagram account for, I don't know, I feel like as long as it's existed, and I crack up at your reels. They're so entertaining. They're so spot on. You calling out the dusty sun. I want to get in there today. I'm super excited. But before we dive in, I like to start with, tell us a little bit about where you're from, about your growing up, and what shaped you to be this man, this girl dad that you are today.
Well, that I feel like that is such a complicated question because there's so many levels to coming up. But growing up, I came up in Southern California, a little east of LA, in a town called Fontana. Well, I guess it was a city. They call it town like I'm in the Midwest or something. No. But it was a very diverse area. It was beautiful. Loved it. I was raised by a very strong single mother, and never met my father. But my mom did everything that she could to take care of me. And she taught me hard work, from a very young age. And she's had 2 jobs literally like majority of my life. Like she still has 2 jobs to this day, and she doesn't need to, but she does because she's just that type of worker. She'd be the type that, if somebody was mowing the lawn across the street, say, "Hey, Eric will do it," and just send me. So she taught me hard work. My mother was very passionate and made sure that those that she loves, that they were taken care of. So I knew she was always there for everything. From a young age, I grew very quickly, though. I think being fatherless kind of forces you into certain situations. But at the same time, I was 6'2" when I was 13 with a mustache.
Oh,
Goodness gracious.
So growing physically kind of forced me to try to think I was older and try to flirt with the older girls when I shouldn't have been when I was a kid. But adolescent life was interesting. I feel like I had a very opposite side of the spectrum when it came to influences. My mom always made sure I was involved in church. I had great church leaders that were great men. My grandfather, amazing, great man. He's so self-sacrificing, hardworking, just like my mom. But then I also was raised by Eminem and Lil Wayne on the other side, who were just stuck in my ears constantly. And, the basketball scene as well. I played basketball my whole life. So just very different influences that created part of the dust that I've been trying to shake off for the longest and trying to push that off. But also some of it being a very good foundation that helped me find my way back to what I should have been. And as I grew older, my young adult days, I started to recognize more and more the things that I was missing. I remember when Tangled came out. I don't know how you guys feel about the Disney movies, but I watched Tangled as a 19-year-old by myself at the movie theater.
Oh my!
because there's a kid in me that was always missing something. And my main goal, as I've come and grown older, I knew that I wanted to be one thing or 2 things really. And that was to be a great husband and to be a great father. People ask me like, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And people say, "A firefighter. I want to play in the NBA." Yada, yada. Like I just knew I wanted to be a great dad and I wanted to be a great husband because my mom didn't have that. I didn't have that.
Yeah.
And recognizing what that actually means for me has taken a lot of time, a lot of research, a lot of introspection, but it's been a lot of fun. And I love being a dad now, love being a husband. And just oddly enough, it's working through a lot of those insecurities as a kid helped me realize, okay, this is actually what matters most in life and who I need to be.
That's good. How old were you when you guys got married?
We were married, I was 25.
Okay.
It's almost been a decade.
Wow, congrats.
Coming up on 9 years. It's going to be awesome.
That's awesome. And then how long until you guys had kids? How long were you married?
We actually, um, so being married at 25, in a sense, we felt like we were a little older,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really not.
Yeah,
At
you're
the
so
time,
young.
we felt like we were older. And we felt really confident and really good with each other and knowing that we wanted to get it started. So we waited a year. It was literally on our year anniversary that we decided to have children. So it
Mm-hmm.
was, 9 months after that,
Mm-hmm. Everyone's doing
technically
the math.
10.
Yeah, right. Thank you. It is technically 10. Drives me nuts when people say pregnancy is 9 months. It's 10. You just don't know the first 4 weeks.
That's true.
So conversations with you and your wife. I mean, I assume you're sharing a lot about, because did you guys grow up together? Did she know you as a teen and as a child, or no?
She did not. No, she's still learning parts of those, and
Okay.
when we're vulnerable with each other, which is normal. Um, we met actually at a church activity, and when we were both 24, I would say,
Uh-huh.
and dated for 3 months, and I was like, "It's time to wife you up. Let's go." I was ready to go, and it felt right, and always has since then.
Hmm.
So we
I
dated
love
for
that.
3 months, got married probably 6 months after that.
I love that.
Yeah,
The saying, when you know,
yeah,
it's true. I
absolutely.
concur. Yeah, I totally agree with that. What did early conversations look like in your marriage? At what point did you realize, like, I am pursuing a life where I want to fulfill some of the things I didn't have for myself?
Well, one of the things early on that I noticed with her and I, and previous relationships I had, were it was such good conversation.
Mm.
My man, our first date, I brought her in and out, and she didn't want to eat it because she ate her mom's bomb Mexican food earlier. But so I sat up eating, and we literally stayed up till 3 in the morning just talking.
Mm.
Didn't do anything else, literally just talking. And I knew it was going to be something special and something different than any relationship I had before, because I could just easily have a conversation with her like she was my best friend already. And keeping that communication, I think, was huge. And that was something that I didn't see in my own house. And I knew that I wanted that. My mom got married when I was 10. So I had the whole stepfather situation for
Mhm.
about 6 years, and they divorced. But I remember communication was always an issue for them. That
Mm.
when and it's no hate on him, but there are things that he didn't handle when he from the kid inside him. But he didn't know how to really communicate his issues, and my mother would over communicate him issues according to him. And they get in the fight. He'd disappear into his room for a while, didn't want to talk to anybody, and then come out like it was all cool, you know,
Mm.
or have an argument with me or about me, and there wasn't any resolution. And so that communication I knew was huge with my wife, being able to have that, but also recognizing I was at a point in my life where I had really come to God, and I was seeking after Him.
Mhm.
And when I was seeking after Him, I was no longer just going to these activities to try to find a girl to date. I was trying to legitimately go after and get to know and have a relationship with God again. That she happened to walk through the door looking amazing, and I had to go and talk to her afterwards. But knowing that our relationship was based, you know, on our faith, but also on a real relationship that was a best friend relationship, but also one that could be completely open, vulnerable, and working on ourselves. Because she's always like, she's the best thing that's ever happened to me, because we're all about progress. She's always trying to move forward and find new ways to make things happen
Mhm.
and to make me better and to call me out on things. You know,
Mhm.
I didn't really have that before. Most of the time, I thought I was like hot stuff and be with a girl, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're so cool." I have my wife's like, "Nah, fix this. I love you. You're amazing, but you can be more amazing every day."
Mm.
And I knew I needed that in the relationship, and she makes me better every day.
That's good. Um, in this conversation, one of the things you talk about on your Instagram a lot is like, I'm going to show my daughters XYZ so that your dusty son doesn't try to impress her with the cheaper version of XYZ, right? Well, I think one of the first things I saw was like you in this really fancy tea room, and you're like taking my daughters to a tea room. And I remember showing Joey and was like,
So funny.
this is it.
It's so good.
So, in this vein of like, shaking the dust off, shaking the old habits, always self improving, how do you describe a dusty son?
That is a great question. I've been trying to really make this sound as good as it could. So I'm going to make it an analogy, right?
Okay.
You think of a car that's
Mhm.
been left in a garage for years, right? Say it's a 69 Chevelle Super Sport, right? American Muscle, whatever. It's built for a purpose, right? And it can still technically fulfill that purpose, but it might be clunky. It might have some issues from that misuse. The dust that's acquired, just accumulated over time. It might have rusted. So some parts you need to wipe off, some you need to spray and clean, while others, they might not be operating properly at all and they need replacement, right? So as men, we were created for a glorious purpose, but sometimes our mindsets, our perspectives, our habits are very dusty and they need some cleaning. Some need replacing. And, a dusty dude is somebody who's been stuck in his ways for a long time, isn't willing to change them, and isn't able to change them mostly because they don't recognize what the problems are. So dusty son is somebody who's been stuck in his ways and needs to wipe that dust off his face and recognize that there's something better that they can do.
That they were built for greatness. And that with that dust still on them, it's hard to fulfill and achieve that greatness because it's impacting their performance to some degree.
Exactly.
I love that because it's not attacking their inherent value. You're saying these men are inherently valuable, but there might be some things in your life. There might be some skeletons in your closet. There might be whatever, phrase you want to use. And I'm curious, because this is something Joey and I talk a lot about. What separates people from saying, I am going to be introspective and change this thing versus the people who stay dusty? I mean, what is the thing? Can we identify that?
I think the main issue with most men is honesty, is allowing yourself to really be true about what your problems are. I think when most of us were growing up, I think we became pretty professional liars to an extent with a lot of things. We don't want to admit our faults or recognize where the problems are because that would mean we'd have to get uncomfortable and change something.
Yeah, that's good.
But it's something that you said before, when I call these people out, I actually had to add a caveat at the bottom because so many people were getting offended. A lot of boy moms were getting upset. My son is not dusty. How dare you say that about him? I didn't say your son. I didn't say Chad. I didn't say Dante. I didn't say your kid's name. Like at the bottom, I had to put, this is an introspection into my own life. Me as the child that I was, trying to wipe off all of the dust and the problems that I've recognized in myself and allowed myself to do so. And, for anybody who's anti-dusty, who's doing your thing, great. I love you. Keep going. For those who aren't, we have to allow ourselves to just be honest, to be truthful, and to say, you know what? Yeah, that is a problem. I'm going to work at it to change it. And again, marriage is incredible, but it is the ultimate way to recognize where your flaws are. Right. And I think that's why a lot of people struggle and why a lot of marriages struggle is because we're not willing to be honest about what it is we need to do to be better, and then actually taking the steps necessary to make that happen for the other person. That's why I really started it for my daughters. Is obviously I want to be the best example of what I'm calling out, but also recognizing like we're not perfect. Like, and I love my men, and it's hard for me to bring the things up because it sounds like I would be downing or putting something negative on these men, but it's true that we are all amazing. Like we are built for a glorious purpose. We are built to do God's work on this earth. But if you can't recognize where your problems are, like you're never going to change it.
quick side note that I would just jump in here with is we have 3 daughters, and Eric has 2 daughters. And so as we're kind of discussing these, possibly dusty men, one thing that goes through my mind, I'm guessing, Eric, maybe yours as well, is that I hope someday that my daughters will get married, right? And so there's almost like this part of me that that really resonated with some of these posts that Eric would put up, because it's almost like, for me, I would see myself in that, yeah, I really hope somebody out there is really putting some intentionality behind this, because I want somebody that's going to take care of my kids the way I have, right? And I think that I love this analogy of the Chevelle in the garage, right? And the discipline and intentionality it takes to take that thing and make it run again, right? Or to bring it to its full potential. You might get lucky and the engine starts, right? But man, are you wanting to take it across the country? Probably not, right? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And so for me, there is so much that when we talk about maturity, we talk about getting the dust off, we talk about growth, and we talk about it on here quite often. But it's become this new thing that I've been considering, and I'm going to pose this as something to you. And there's a number of ways to mature and grow, right? Like how we help our kids. And so I don't have sons, I have daughters. And one of the ways I've identified through myself as a man, but also through my daughters, that has been seeming to work hand in hand, regardless of who we are. Responsibility is one of the greatest ways to maturity for me. And the way I've seen that is when I take responsibility, meaning I take the ownership or the responsibility of XYZ, I now have a sense of maturity that comes with that. An example would be when you have a kid and you're there and you take ownership and you take the responsibility. Not you have responsibility, but you reject it, because that's not the same. When you take responsibility and you own that, so much maturity comes with that. And so looking at our kids, the way we've identified this in kind of like everyday practice has been to give them responsibility early, right? And appropriately, right? Because we're not saying like, here's, I don't know, some bad example of responsibility. Go on out there and have fun, right? Here, you can cross the street at age 2, just be careful. It's like, we're not doing that, right? So, but Eric, I'm curious, Eric, in this idea, this effort of maturity in your own life, some of the methods that maybe you found as a man that you've identified, wow, these are some of the practices or things or concepts I utilized to help me get there. And I'm just interested in discussing the ways and tactics we can employ or deploy to kind of accelerate or to begin maturing ourselves or our kids.
Well, I love that you brought up responsibility, because I mean that's the essential. It's an art, I think, taking responsibility, because I feel like majority of us weren't really raised to necessarily do that. I think we would either get in trouble or you try to get out of trouble majority of the time. I remember I got in trouble one time in high school, and they made me call my mom. And so what did mom say? Wait till you get home. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I'm thinking of every possible way to try to make whatever this punishment is going to be less, right? Rather than, you know what? This is what I did, Mom. I'm sorry. I apologize to the person that I did it to, and I will work to get better. I think there is a 10-year-old boy in majority of in my life. There's a 10-year-old boy that's terrified of getting in trouble, and that happens a lot and I've noticed that especially in my marriage. Early on in my marriage, and even to this day, there's times where I'm like, I find myself trying to formulate something to get me out of the problem that I have created with my wife, when what I should be doing is recognizing and accepting that, yes, I did wrong. Yes, there's something that I can do better, and I'm going to work at it. I'm actually going to try. Right. So I think with emotional intelligence, I've really been studying into that a lot the last couple of years, especially as my girls are growing, and I'm growing, and I'm learning more about myself, is recognizing when my 10-year-old version of me is trying to parent or trying to be a husband versus when me as an adult that takes responsibility. I mean, that's what a real man is supposed to do, is take responsibility for his stuff, is to provide on every level. If you go back to the Chevelle thought process, the car, there are so many parts to a vehicle. I would love to actually do the whole elbow grease and like get into that engine and learn all about it. But there's so much to it, and I need somebody to guide me. So sometimes you need to follow an actual plan to say, those first 3 steps are huge. Being honest, be true about what the problem is. And I've gotten so good at journaling. I would suggest to every man, and I think most of us think it's like, oh, dear diary. Like, nah, like write down, like when I have say I get in an argument with my wife, or we have a problem, or even some with my kids, I've started to take notes. Because not only, it's really good. Some things just go in one ear out the other, but to actually write it down, I can see it, right? And from the teacher that I was back in California, you need to see it, you need to hear it, and it needs to be reinforced. And then 75% better retention if you are able to see it, to hear it, and repeat it. And if we start doing that, actually taking ownership of our responsibility, I think that's when we can actually start making changes.
I dig that. That's so good. How do you feel like the male or father kind of involvement in family has changed over the years?
You're saying in general?
Yeah.
I think, I mean, obviously in my situation, there was non-existent.
Totally.
But I feel like the responsibility for a lot, the thought was to provide monetarily, right? Even for my grandfather. My grandfather was amazing. I love that man, and he's done so much for me. But as a father himself, they called him Double Time Don, because he worked double time as much as he could. He had 8 kids, right? Yeah. So he was working hard at California Edison, but he was constantly working to provide that money. And he did, which is fantastic. Being able to feed 8 children, and obviously, is a little easier without the inflation business that we can just go on a tangent about. But but at this point, I feel like I keep seeing these news reports about millennials spending so much more, like 90% more time with their kids, and recognizing the essential nature of having a father that is there. If you think about, right, and I know you guys are probably on the same wavelengths as me. We all homeschool now, right? And I've been getting into sourdough and like learning how to, we're growing our own foods and just trying to go old school the way it used to be. There was a father that like had their own land. We had animals to care for. The kids were out with the dad, caring for the land and the animals, and just we all had responsibilities and we worked together. We taught them things live in the moment as it was happening. I think a lot of us are going back to that thought process and recognizing that when we were coming up, we were, the dad was working hard to be able to provide, but the actual emotional side of like, who is dad? Who is this father?
Yeah.
What are they about? What do they love? What do they care about? And instilling values every single day. I think it's getting better for a lot, but then for a lot more, it's getting worse because things are separating. And I love the technology, right? I love Instagram because it's giving me a platform to be able to spread the message that I'm trying to spread. But so many kids have these screens between them and their parents now too. So I think it depends on which side you're on, but some things are getting fantastic and some things are getting worse. But it's really up to you and how you want to make it happen with your family. I love homeschool because we can have the kids around us as much as possible, and trying to build that set of morals and who we would like them to be, but also helping them find who they're supposed to be, and trying to impart as much of myself to them so they know me. I think that was one of the hardest things growing up fatherless, is like trying to know myself when all I felt was loneliness.
Mm.
Yeah.
And my mother was working very hard, but I think to some extent I didn't really know her very well either, as just an individual and like who she was. And I'm still learning things about her because now I actually ask questions.
Oh.
I'm not that teenage boy that's like, yeah, ma,
Mhm.
cereal. Like I am learning more as I grow. But I would love for I feel like fathers now, and I feel like you're probably this way as well, Joey. Like we're as involved as we can be
Mhm.
in building that masculine side of this is dad. He
Mhm.
loves me. There is a solid foundation in who I am because this man's got my back.
Mhm.
I feel like there's like a cyclical nature going on here. There's so many factors that I believe form our understanding of what the role of a father and a husband should be, or just a male role model, if you will.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many factors. One would be cyclical. I think that there's some reality to, man, back in the day, this worked. Why aren't we doing that? I feel like there's some of that. Like, son, I'm gonna take you out in the woods. We're gonna learn how to go hunting. I'm gonna teach you to, how to drag a deer out of the wood. Like, I'm gonna teach you these things. I'm gonna teach you these things that my grandfather taught me. Some of this legacy mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Legacy mindset, because it's called legacy, right? Has been around for ever. It's just always been a thing. I'm gonna tell stories of I feel like that some of that's coming back. I feel like there's also some forming that happens with technology and the world today.
Mhm.
And there was once a time, maybe I'm wrong because I didn't live through it, wherein working to provide for the family straight up just took more time. Not that people aren't working hard these days, because I believe that they are. And there's definitely people out there, shout out to all the, farmers, and they're putting in like extra hours. But man, back in the day, the farmers, I mean, they're taking their sons and daughters out, they were working together. There was a lot more togetherness, right? But it was natural, it was organic. Where as times have shifted, there's still this provisional or providing mentality, I believe. I don't think that that's gone. It might not be like it used to be, but I do believe that that's there. At least I feel that. I feel this desire to provide and take care of my family monetarily, right, with money. But also, today's Friday. It's, for me, it's 10:45 in the morning and I'm home, right? And I'm able to do this thing with my wife that is not, my traditional day job, because there's video calls and there's, cell phones and there's email and there's a lot of things that have allowed me to be able to do that. And a lot of husbands and fathers have that ability now. And I feel like there's, in some capacity, there's like a delayed response in how we now shift our intentionality to like growing things that matter. And something that my dad always used to tell me, and it was oftentimes with the business lens on, right? But a very entrepreneurial family, our just for generations. And it was always that, Joey, what you focus on grows. What you focus on grows. But that just applies to everything. And so oftentimes Elizabeth and I will sit down and we'll be talking about what is it that needs to grow and what do we need to focus on. And so sometimes, yeah, financially we need to focus, because straight up, like, got to make money, got to have food, got to pay the bills, got to keep the house running, got to do that. Car broke down, etc. Right? There's also times where the focus is, hey, where are we spiritually? And do we need to grow that? Do we need to intentionally focus on that? And, even back to the Chevelle analogy, right? There's so many pieces. It's almost like sometimes you're kind of always working on that. It's kind of your baby, right? You never get it to a point where it's good forever now, right? It's you're running this thing and you're going to have, brake repair, and, you change the tires. You're going to have to, if you're going to keep the seats, you take care of the leather, right? Whatever it is. And, what you focus on grows. And so I think with the way that the world is constantly changing and evolving, people are walking around now with like masks on that are keeping them connected to everything, which low key, if someone said, hey, do you want to try this? I'm trying it, right? I'm interested. There's enough nerd in me that would be super interested in seeing what that was like.
I love Ready Player One. Yeah. Let's
go.
go.
I'm interested. turn up, like let's go. But I do believe there needs to be some intentionality into how we are fathers and husbands, and our role changes with the times.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we can be slow to react.
Yeah.
And it's easy to come home, have a ton of free time because we're providing well. And
Yeah.
what else can we do?
You guys have both hit on an interesting point and shift, and you both said it in your own separate ways. Eric's like, listen, we have a lot of benefits now, but we also have a lot of boundaries or a lot of hurdles, I should say, because technology is a real distraction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you're getting at, Joe, is like, hey, we might be able to provide the income for our family to live and thrive in less time during the day, but we haven't necessarily turned on this new thing of, hey, how can we allocate those hours into intentionally building into the things that matter?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's your home, whether that's your kids, whether that's your relationships, your friendships as men. How many men would say their friendships are dwindling because they've just fallen out of practice of building into other men? And so that's the key, right? If we can, and you can see people leveraging that well, you can see them saying, hey, I'm able to provide for my family and also stay continually in a posture of shaking off the dust and reevaluating my time and where am I going and how can I utilize technology for its good, purposeful benefits and not let it run my life. So I love that. My follow-up to the recapping of what you both just said is, as wives, are there ways that we inhibit a male's expression in the family? Are there ways that we're maybe also having to learn and flex with the times? Because I know a lot of women, and sometimes I feel this way too, is like finding the groove of, say, Joey goes to work in the office, he comes home, he wants to decompress, he's looking at his phone. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm here with the kids all day. I immediately step in and are there ways that women can support the strong masculine position of a father in the home? Do you see what I'm asking?
I do.
Well, that's tough because I can speak primarily from my point of view, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, story time. So from 2020, COVID for me was life changing in a good way. I know that didn't happen to everybody, but in a good way where I was a teacher in Southern California, and so we went to remote learning. And for me, it was fantastic. I got to be around my family like way more than we ever had. But as the time went on, I recognized how often I was like in and out of the office and how often that kind of threw off just the home life balance that she was used to. I'd get up, be out of the house by 6:45 on my way to work, and so her day would start with all of her set expectations for the day. And then now, right, and then I get home at like 4 and the evening would start. But now that I've been fully remote for a while with a couple of my jobs, and setting up and making sure that that intention, like I am still at work for sure. And being a content creator now, I'm like, yes, I am absolutely at work, and my wife is doing the hard work of being the provider of the home for the girls. But when it comes to now, because I don't have like a set schedule, if I pop out and they're in the middle of lessons, I can derail the entire thing for homeschool for that hour. They were trucking, it was going really well, and then like, Daddy, and they're running out. And so as far as the original question was what wives could do, I realized I just kind of went opposite with that. But I think is just the intentionality of what you were talking about before. Like this has to be open conversation, open communication, because it is completely different. We used to head off to work, and now we have so much more time to be able to do what with. We're not used to having that time. So having family meetings, I think, is huge. My wife and I have been setting up the times, and we plan out our next day. And I think sometimes a wife she wants to give me the best opportunities and the time that she can have, but she also needs time for herself too. And she also needs time to be able to do what she needs to do as far as homeschool is concerned. So I think being open and honest and not being afraid to kind of inconvenience us is the thought process, thinking she's getting in the way,
Mhm.
but she's not. I need her to. We're always open. We're always honest, and the more that we talk about the things that matter the most, and setting up timetables of what we can do. Obviously, with younger kids, it's not going to work exactly how you want it to every time,
Right.
but having contingencies as well, and
Mhm.
just being open to trying new things, because this is a different lifestyle now.
Mhm.
It's different.
I dig that. I agree. And I think that your question is so perplexing and right off from my gut, because I'm like trying to think of some, umbrella, every man, this would be viable. And I just don't think that's real. I think that every relationship has their own nuances. Every wife, every husband, everyone's going to be so different. And so, like Eric, I can speak for myself, and I can say, man, give me a challenge to solve.
Mm.
Bring the challenges to the table. What's going on? And or present a situation to me and ask me to help figure out what that challenge is and what we should do about it. Let's talk. Let's connect. Right. So it starts with what Eric was talking about from the get-go. It's like, are we having that connection? Are we talking? Are we having time set aside to where either one of us can enable the other? Is that happening? That's the first thing. And secondly, it's, man, if I want to be that impact in the family, I have to know how.
Yeah.
And you're my boots on the ground, if I'm honest, right? So for me, you're the boots on the ground. And if you come to me and you say, listen, I'm really struggling with Ruthie, and she's having a hard time eating, and we make all this amazing food. Eric, our kids are so spoiled. I mean, just side tangent here. I went to culinary school. Okay, so like I food is my thing. I cook, not just like I went to a couple classes. Like I was working in some of the nicest restaurants in Cincinnati, and I can cook. Okay, and now we have a whole like side of our life that is dedicated to amazing food and helping people educate themselves, understanding macronutrients and just health and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
The dinners our kids get are obnoxiously awesome, and it sometimes feels like they don't care. It's anyways. Sorry, side tangent there. But sometimes the conversation really is so and so just refuses to eat the meals we make.
Mm-hmm. It's humbling. Yeah,
it is. It's like, what do you want? We're talking about like the most amazing proteins cooked in the most proper ways. Anyways,
and she only wants to eat an apple.
Dude, the apples. What is it with apples?
That's my youngest right now.
Yeah.
I'm not a culinary genius in that way. I've been learning a lot over the last couple of years. I feel like I'm pretty good. And yeah, put together this beautiful meal, and she's like, I don't like this. Have an apple. Apple? You had 3 apples today.
Dude, it's so true.
I know, but I like apples. I know.
It's so true.
I might use that, Daddy, see if it scares her.
I don't like this. Anyhow, giving me these challenges to solve is really powerful for me. And we have definitely found a rhythm where that's kind of where I can make a impact.
Yeah, that's good. The reason I ask is because like I grew up in a household where my dad was a pilot. So he flew commercial airlines. So he's gone like 4-day trips 3 times a month, 4 times a month. And I didn't see a whole lot of my parents co-parenting. It was like I was home with my mom while my dad was on a trip, and then he would come home. I have 3 older brothers. Like we all kind of were independent. And so if I were going to model my parenthood after what I saw and I grew up in, then I probably, like, my parents didn't have conversations about us kids in front of me. I wouldn't have that. And I can see, and I know this because I've talked to them and I've been this person before. It's easy for moms to feel like they are alone, to feel isolated, and to feel like the children's problems are theirs to carry alone. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we do this thing where we kind of self-sabotage, and we want your all's help. Like we want you to help, but we know we do it better. And so like, we want you to help, but we want you to do it our way. And that's why I asked the question, is because obviously I know saying that that's not super helpful to you guys. And part of allowing strong male figures, especially incredibly involved dads when you're raising daughters, it's hard because mom has to be comfortable saying, hey, here's a problem. Can you help me figure it out? And I trust your solution. Because if you didn't grow up with that parenthood dynamic and you never saw that modeled, how are you going to know? You might go about your life in your childhood, in your parenthood, thinking that you have to be the number one firefighter in all of your kids' trials and tribulations, and you don't leave space for your spouse to come in and be the father that he knows he can be, or ask it of him. Sometimes women are scared to just ask their husbands, hey, are you in this game with me or not? Are we partners here? Are we playing on the same team? Or is there something else that we need alignment first before we can tackle this parenting challenge?
Is it possible in that same kind of vein? So the question the example I posed was, hey, bring a challenge. And Eric, I'm super interested in your thoughts on this as well. Bring me a challenge. Now, the assumption there is that if I provide some input onto how to deal with that challenge, there's almost like a leadership kind of situation that's now at play, right? It would almost be like, you're bringing a challenge to me. I discussed the challenge, but again, and then tomorrow I'm going to go to work. And I'm going to come back to you that evening and say, hey, how'd it go? Did you implement this idea that we talked about with Ruthie? And there's an assumption there, like what you just said, is that you do it better. So if I'm bringing an example or an idea in some way, shape or form, now is there any kind of pride there going on where we don't want to be told how to do something? Is that happening at all?
For men or for women?
For women.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't walk into your job and tell you how to do it, but I think that's where we fool ourselves, because while I'm generalizing, say you are the woman and you are the at-home primary parent, your kids are still your husband's kids too. So yes, you are day to day. I like Joey's analogy of like boots on the ground. You're like in it all the time. You can give like real life updates from the field, but you should feel the confidence in your partner to share that load and responsibility. And I think it's a case-by-case situation, because there are times where, say it is, a picky eating challenge with one of our kids, and we kind of develop the solution together. And then I know, for me being at home, I have to enact that solution. I'm the one who's going to go grocery shop, pick out these foods. And then I could even, ask for your help to cook the dinner if I want to, but like, I know that it's my job to do this. There's other times where it's like, hey, I need you to build into this child in this way, because this is what's going to solve the parenting issue here. This is your job to take. You're the lead on this one. And you have to be able to say who's the lead, which times. And I just think, how many women are selling their husbands short, and how many husbands are selling themselves short by believing that it's not my role. I can't do it. I'm not equipped. I didn't see that growing up. I can't do that. I don't have a friend who I could model that after. And so I find the most impactful parenting decisions we've made is when we can effectively say, whose strength is this in?
Yeah, that's good.
And then move from there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, I love that. I love how you guys put that together, because it's something I've noticed on my page. A lot of the comments that come in with a lot of the women is feeling like their husbands, their men aren't stepping up and actually taking part in the relationship and taking care of the home. I feel like those ones usually do the best for me, because there's so many women just feel like their husbands don't do their part. But there is such a nuance in the relationship, and being able to, I know for me, it took me a long time, and I still struggle with it sometimes, but being told how to do something and being told that I'm doing it wrong, then the pride in a man is very, very quick to be like, oh, well, you do it then. Bye.
Yep, totally.
Like if you want me to do this, but you're telling me I'm doing it wrong, like, bye, I'm done. I feel like a lot of guys probably have fallen into that trap. But I remember even early on our marriage, I had no idea how to wash a dish properly. I grew up with a dishwasher. My wife is Mexican. Her family wash everything by hand, put it in the dishwasher to dry. Right. So we first one I washed, I thought I was being cool. Wife came home. Hey, babe, I washed the dishes. Oh wow, look at me. Like, give me a freaking cookie. Then she looked at it. She's like, "What is this cloud? No, do it again." And then she showed me how to do it. Initially, I was like offended because I'm like, yo, I washed the dishes for you. But then I saw, oh, you have to put soap in the actual, on the scrubber. You have to actually, get some froth there. You have to push to get the stuff out. Like, it sounds silly and really sad, actually. But I never learned how. I didn't know how. So I had to watch and learn and figure out how to do it. And I now know how to wash the dishes. I've been doing it for years now, and it's a team effort. But the team aspect is recognizing, and this is another problem. This one comes up a lot. If we ever bring up the word help with a lot of women, they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for helping me maintain the house. This is what you should be doing anyway." And a lot of the Dusty Sun videos that I've made have been kind of focused around that thought process, because it's true. Like, we live in the same house. Like, we're both adults. I should be able to wash dishes. I should be able to clean bathrooms. I should be able to sweep, mop, know how to do those things. Absolutely, my wife knows how to do it better. She always has. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be doing it, because of the amount, the mental and emotional load that comes with child rearing, and especially with homeschool, with the kids the entire day. And there's a lot that goes into that emotional, her cup can be full. So when I get off of work, not only, do I need to help or just be there with the kids, playing with them, being a father as I should be, but also being a husband and being a father, modeling after them. This is how we take care of the house, right? Because this is our home. This is where we live. And I am an adult. Your mom is an adult as well. We both know how to do this. I've been trying to make that an example for her, but for my kids. But it's taken a lot of humility, I think, on both sides. Allowing, number one, my wife allowing the reins to be turned over to this amateur who has no idea what he's doing sometimes, allowing him to learn. And on the other side, allowing yourself to learn as a husband, to recognize, like, okay, yeah, you know what, I did do that wrong. Let me try it again. And I feel like there's sometimes there's a low-key trauma that happens with it. There's like a trauma response, like, okay, I'm not going to touch that then. I'm going to let you do that because I did it wrong. I can't do it right. But that's the 10-year-old boy that is afraid to figure out how to do it. I loved how you guys wrapped that, though. It's teamwork, man. Teamwork.
I dig it.
Yeah, it's teamwork, and it's the whole help thing. I want to touch on that for a moment, because I feel that, and I think part of the tension that comes with, first of all, social media, isn't it just awesome how you can put out amazing content and like you'll still get so much hate in the comments?
So much.
There's so much pushback, but it's good. It's weeding out. Let's flesh it out, man. Humanity is messy.
Yes.
The help piece. Not wanting to call it help because then it insinuates that it's my responsibility. I think that's legit. I also think what is legit, again, it comes down to having that conversation of like, hey, what is under your jurisdiction generally, and what is under mine generally? Because for me, I always clean the bathrooms. Joey recently shaved his beard, left hair all over the floor. Okay, it's currently there. I know I got to go clean it after this show. I know that about him, and yet I love him anyways. But like, this man I left last night, the kids had just enjoyed a family movie, and the house was destroyed. There was a raw chicken in the fridge, and I said, bye, I'm going to hang out with my mother. I came home. The chicken had been cooked. First of all, it had been broken down. It was a whole chicken. He broke it down. He pan roasted it, finished it in the oven, fed our kids an amazing meal, then took the bones and was making a stock, had the entire kitchen spotless when I came in, asked me to stop at the store for some snackies, and then we watched a show together. Okay. That is like next level husband material.
Yes.
And it's like, I think I looked at you and I said, thank you for cleaning the kitchen. Because here's the thing, as the wife who is getting help, yes, that is Joey's responsibility to feed his kids too, because I physically wasn't there. But like, he did a baller job. Like he 10 out of 10. You were amazing. I can also then thank you and say, thanks for helping me out. Because there's been other times where I was like, hey, this ain't it. I came home, the kitchen's really dirty. And now I feel screwed over for the following
Bring me
day.
back down to earth. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's definitely been some times where we have not made the great meal and left the house a mess.
But I think it's this conversation over time, and it comes down to what you said, Eric, is you both have to have humility. Okay, I have to have humility to say, you know what, even though I tell him every single time when he shaves his beard, his little hairs get everywhere, he doesn't clean it up.
I will say,
you think you clean it, but it's all over the floor. It's like a blind spot. Okay,
I literally made a Dusty Sun video about that.
Did you?
True story.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to look it up.
Because I did that too. I was that guy too.
I try to clean. I really do.
You park your truck in the middle of the driveway. I have worn down the patch of grass on the side, and it's a hill. So I'm like halfway up the hill in my old 22-year-old minivan, trying to get around your truck. Anyways, humility on my side. I can recognize, like, man, I could just rip his head off every time and just be angry, and you're not helping. It's not your job to help. These are your responsibilities. Or I can come at you. I guess the other word would be grace, right? I give him grace, and also know that I respect grace and humility in return. But it really is beautiful when you're able to figure out, hey, generally, what is mine and what is yours, even if you have to do it day by day. Hey, on this day when you're home from work, Saturdays is kind of weird because the family's not used to you being home. What is yours and what is mine? And how can we help each other in that? Help each other in that. Not just like, hey, can you babysit the kids? Because that's another one. People are like, it's not babysitting.
Oh, they hate that one.
It's your own kids, you know.
That's your kid.
Oh, this is so good. Okay, I want to get into some of the ways that you are preparing your daughters to have these successful relationships in their life. How are you parenting with their future in mind?
Well, it's funny you brought up the haters on social media, because so many of them are like, how are you going to teach your daughter that? And just they just get so upset. And I feel like because they think I'm literally saying these things directly to my daughter. Like, don't you deal with no Dusty Son. Leave his beard trimmings in the nope, he's done. Leave him. Like, I'm not doing that. My goal is to be the best example of a husband and a father for them, because as I made a video yesterday talking about modeling behavior. You know, my kids do way more with what I do than do what I say. So the more that I can show them what it's supposed to look like and actually be modeled after, that when they're 21 or whatever age they're at and they're actually on a date or they're getting to know this guy, they'll say, oh, my dad used to do that, you know, or my dad never did that, so they can run, you know. Like, I want to show them the best ways to be, because and I'm always researching, always, you know, this is the most important job I will ever have in my life, being a husband, being a father. And I remember, you know, being a teacher in California, I left to go into sales in Utah, you know, tech boom, be one of those guys. I had never studied for anything in my life before that I did for that job interview, right? And when I think about, now that I'm out of school, I actually know how to study. But studying, researching, practicing, learning how to be a husband and how to be a father is essential. I have a stack of fatherhood books over here, of books to be the best husband that I can be. I follow great people like you, like so many other fatherhood and parenting accounts on social media. I try to surround myself to recognize the things that matter the most so that I can be that guy. So that when my kids are older, they'll say, that's what my dad used to do, or that's what my dad does. This is who my dad is. And they can remember those things, because I'm creating a childhood for them. Right. And I think that's one of the bigger things that I'm always trying to remember is living on purpose to give them the memories of what they're going to have. I have my memories of my childhood. And I was literally, as I was looking through some of these questions, preparing myself, I was like, wow, I have so much trauma. I was trying to prepare myself like, okay, let me try to make this sound as good as it can be. But there was a lot of problems in my childhood. And I remember a lot of those. I remember a lot of the pain. So trying to give as much love and support and giving a rock, a foundation that they can base their own emotional childhood on, so that they have great memories and know who they are. I think our faith in God obviously gives us purpose. It helps us remember who we are, that we have something greater than just this sickness right now, right? We all got sick a couple of weeks ago. Like, Jesus feels you. He knows you. You're not alone. He specifically knows you and what you're going through. And knowing that there's a God who can give that to them, to give them that purpose, is huge. And also that you have a Father on earth who knows you and who loves you and will always be there for you, and helping them find that best version of themselves. We're trying to chisel out the sculpture within the rock, but really it's them breaking out of it and becoming who they're supposed to be.
That's beautiful. I think something that shocks me and I really admire about you is how quickly you can pivot from recognizing the trauma in your childhood. While you laughed and joked about it, I know that's real and that encompasses pain. And you can so quickly turn it around into action and influence your next generation. There's not an empty generation in between there. You're not wasting your time as a father still unpacking your generational trauma, and that's it. And that's something I see a struggle of our generation. Specifically, I'm going to call them millennials.
Mm-hmm.
We have this newfound recognition of hey, maybe some things in our childhood weren't exactly right. Maybe we experienced some things that still haunt us or hurt us or left us confused. And sometimes we get stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a balance of recognizing, yes, that is true. You are heard and you are completely validated in your feelings of that bad experience or those bad lived patterns or those generational curses. But you can also put action into influencing the next generation, which is your very kids in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for you to so quickly make that turn is incredible and rare. And I'm just really impressed by the way that you're able to articulate that and live it out. I think that is what we all should strive to do.
Thank you so much. I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily say it was quick though. I've been going through it for a while. It's probably been a decade since I started to, I did therapy for a while, and then really putting in the time. Honestly, my wife is my best friend, and she and I have recognized our faults and are giving each other grace and working at giving ourselves grace to grow and to understand. I recognize when I see people now, even if I'm on the road. Ironically, there's a lot of road rage in Utah. It's kind of wild. But you see somebody and they just cruise around you in this truck, flipping you off. And then I'm like, that's just a hurt little boy who literally can't control his temper.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
You know what I mean? There's a child in there inside that grown man who's too short and has a giant truck, Like, he's got some issues that he needs to work through, and that helps me give other people grace too, which is a blessing in itself. But trauma is just so real, and I've been recognizing it more and more in my own life and in my friends' lives. And I watch as you either get destroyed by it, or you can turn your pain into more pain, or you can turn your pain into progress. And I really think that's the essential nature of what pain is supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
You put your hand over the stove, it's going to burn you. Are you just going to sit there and let your hand melt, or you pull it back and let me turn this off and never do that again? Right.
Mm-hmm.
I've also been, I listened to a lot of CHH, a lot of Christian rappers. What Up RG, he said he turned his pain into praise. And it took a long time for me to recognize that this pain can actually, the uncomfortableness of this pain can help me understand what the problem was. And a lot of millennials, I think, are actually going to therapy trying to
Mhm.
find those changes, but I feel like they get stuck in the circle of talking about it, but
Mhm.
not finding the actual process to get through it and change and make sure that they're not passing it on to the next one.
Mhm.
That was one of the hardest parts of being a teacher because I taught in a lower socioeconomical area in San Bernardino, and you know, I saw the parents literally just passing the pain on to their kids,
Mm.
and it was hard for me because I'm like, 13 years old, like you shouldn't be going through this, but
Mm.
a lot of us are. And I actually saw a carousel the other day that talked about pain and how you have to be, if you are that person who will allow themselves to actually feel the pain, to ingest the pain, digest it, and turn it into something, you will save generations. You will quite literally like be the turning point in your family's life. And that's all I'm trying to do.
Wow. Yeah. That's big. That's good.
Yep, I love that. The analogy of pain is so interesting. It's there is and can be. hmm, I like to say a lot that growth almost never comes without stress.
Mhm.
And I don't necessarily mean stress as in like, oh, I'm so stressed. I mean like you put stress on your muscles to grow them.
Mm-hmm.
You put stress on your brain to learn something new, right?
Mhm.
You are adding some stress. Now, appropriate stress is key here, right? Because you can overdo it. Um, but that flame analogy, you put your hand over it, ow, it hurts, right? Some of the things that you can, some of the growth that you've achieved, well, the immediate one that you would typically assume you've learned is that I shouldn't put my hand on a stove. And you took it a step further of maybe I should turn the stove off, right? And that analogy can apply to so many things. I would even take it a step further in that oftentimes people that have burned themselves will go out of their way to tell people about how they burn themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And there's growth even for other people now, right? So now you're creating a multiplying effect. There's power there. There's almost like this evangelism kind of mentality of, now I burned my hand, I turned the stove off, I'm not going to burn my hand again, and I want to teach you how not to burn your hand, right? And pain can sometimes help us get to that point where we help ourselves learn, help alleviate the problem, the current or the cause, and then go tell people about it. And I really dig it. I really do. I think stress can bring amazing things if it's in an appropriate way and or handled correctly.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying I know how to do that, because I don't know how to do that. I don't know the perfect way to handle stress. I think everybody's different, right? Therapy, amazing. Get some, right? Talking with your spouse, talking with a mentor, reading the Bible, right? Praying. It could be meditation. It could be physical fitness. It could be, who knows? Everyone's got their way of kind of articulating those thoughts or those feelings or that trauma. But I totally agree. I totally get it. I love that.
Mhm. Anything else? I feel like we've covered so much. Anything else you two wanted to talk about?
I'd love to hear some of the food dynamics going on in Eric's house. Before we kind of let him go here, just because food is a thing that we like to discuss here often. And talk about sourdough first. Talk to me how you got into sourdough and what food looks like in your home.
Yeah, I got you. So, well, let me start with a story. So, when my baby, my oldest, was 8 months old, I think, I was doing an old school milkshake where you put the ice cream in the cup, milk in the cup, stir it yourself with that elbow grease, and I spilled some on top of her head,
Oh.
and entire upper body just went into a crazy rash, hives
No
all over the
way.
place. Freaked us out. We were sprinting to the ER, and of course when we get there they were gone. But at the time it was scary, and we found out that she had a whole bunch of allergies. So my daughter's allergic to eggs, dairy, peanuts, sesame, all of the fun stuff that Americans need in their lives. I think, right? A bunch of other tree nuts and stuff, and she has eczema. She has asthma. So from an early age, we started to recognize more and more the pain that would come into her, or what would lead to flare-ups and things like that. and or cause her just to straight up vomit, you know. Um, so we've been trying to learn. I've been trying to learn how to cook. And I was raised up in a house where I remember our four staple meals were, you know, spaghetti, hamburger helper, and some baked fish, and then something that would come from Costco. You just, you know, throw it in the oven, kind of thing. I think I was raised on cereal primarily as a teen. So it took me a long time to actually learn how to cook. It actually just happened over the last probably 5 years where I've really been in the kitchen, and it's become such a love for me. I love it. It's so much fun. It's, you know, you can make something beautiful. You can make things taste great, and actually learning like the process and baking, I feel like took me the longest, trying to actually learn how to do sourdough, because the whole rising, the leavening process is essential, unless you want this little rock cake, quite literally a rock cake. It took me forever to figure that out. So it's been awesome though. Sourdough we love. I've been loving learning how to actually properly cut some designs in the top and whatnot.
I take it.
Throwing some water in there so you get the hydration. It's still crispy on the outside, you know. It's all a process that I've just been learning and growing. And now I am that 34-year-old who watches Food Network. I love Chopped. My kids, we've been into Top Chef Junior.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of fun watching the other kids, you know, cook. And I love having the kids in there with me, because food is part of our family culture, but just culture in general, you know. Growing up, not eating too much cultural food. My wife introduced me to Thai. She introduced me to so many different sides of the Mexican food outside of tacos. And there is so much that comes with the culture of the family in the kitchen. You know, we have a sign up there that says the kitchen is for dancing. You know, we dance in the kitchen, we eat in the kitchen, we laugh, we play, and it's just a part of what makes us whole and what makes us a family. And we've really been enjoying giving the best options as well. I think for the longest I didn't understand this whole process. Like, why does organic matter? You know, it's the same. This looks exactly like this one, but it legitimately makes us feel better. And it wasn't until my daughter and I recognized all of her allergies and what would actually make her flare up that I started reading nutrition labels. Like, I'm sorry, this is bread. Why are there 50 ingredients? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And that has changed our lives, and recognizing how things, as we've talked about before, going back to how things used to be. You know, people would grow their own food, they would make their own food. And sourdough is 4 ingredients, and it's so good and chewy, tangy, and it works with everything, you know. And I think it's a blessing in the family to recognize what food can actually do for you. And it's also scary seeing what is put into so many of the foods that are out there. And I think being able to teach our kids to fuel their bodies with the best ingredients, right? And we could go back to the Chevelle, you know, does this take diesel? No, it doesn't take diesel, right? Am I going to put dirt or oil in there? No, I'm not. Some things might make it work, but it's going to tear up your engine. And so we've been really enjoying our food journey. Me personally, because I actually know how to cook now. I feel like an adult officially.
Do you feel like learning to cook is the reason why you're able to take on I have this frustration, okay? Take on this role of pushing good food in your family, right? Or being a part of that. There are so many men in the world that I just want to grab a hold of and say, this is so much more important than just, we need to have dinner tonight and, you know, my wife's going to figure it out. And it's not about, let's bring up the trigger words again. It's not about just helping with dinner. It's not about just, it's not just about, like last night, you know, Elizabeth left, and I'd like to say that she left me with a plan of what meal was going to happen, or even like some semblance of an idea. And there was a period of time before we wrote What's for Dinner where it was like, I would come home some days, and when Elizabeth was really busy, sometimes my cooking ability was like a bit of a crutch, and it was kind of like an episode of Chopped every day here, where it was like Joey comes in the house, there's an eggplant, there's some, you know, cod, and there's, you know, some, you know, old potatoes from go, right? And it's like, and you want your 4-year-old to eat this food, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make them eat? How am I going to make this palatable for their? Anyways, there's a barrier for guys specifically to get into what I'm going to call the real food game, even being remotely interested in it. And what is that? And why is that? How did you get there?
Well, I told you I came up. I mean, my mom bought the pre-cooked bacon. You know what I mean? Like
It honestly tasted great because I've had it.
It did. It
Yeah.
did. It was always crispy, but 10 seconds in the microwave is ready. So I had no idea what I was doing. I feel like a lot of men don't necessarily spend time in the kitchen. And for me, I've really gotten big into my Traeger. I love smoking some meats, and I feel like there's not many things that are more manly and that just basic man version of what I think a man should be, of cooking food over a fire, and I think not having, growing up fatherless, I just always imagined, I sit in front, cooking some meat over a fire and just having a deep conversation with your dad kind of thing. I think a lot of us aren't growing up being in the kitchen, but also I think it's a time constraint for my mom, right? She always worked 2 jobs. Food was fuel, so she wasn't really worried about what we got. When I was in high school, I had my go-to meal from Wendy's. Went back when they had a dollar menu. Shout out to the dollar menu, RIP. But like, I knew what I would get, but that was the majority of my teenage years. But I also had practice 2 to 3 hours after school, and then I'd always want to be with my friends and things. So being in the kitchen wasn't necessarily an expectation or just like part of the family culture. It was just to, be fed. And so I think I feel like a lot of men are in that situation as well. For me, being an athlete, I think a lot of athletes are in that situation. But as they're getting older and they're recognizing and seeing like, oh my goodness, LeBron has his own personal chef. Maybe I should care about the food that's going into my body. I think sometimes they can get that. But the majority of us, we just didn't have those skills, didn't have those habits. So building that and teaching that to our children, I think, is essential, because it's not just nourishment. Like, you're passing on culture, passing on time. Like, when I've been diving into a lot more of the Mexican foods, because my wife is Mexican, her family's from Jalisco, and we've actually made tamales on our own, all different types, and it's so much fun being in there with the husks, putting in the masa, and our kids are learning how to do it, and they're doing it, and they had such a good time. Yeah, they look terrible. They're not going to cook properly, but they're doing it right now, and they're learning how to do it. So giving the actual skills to do so, but also it's fun, And I think that's what I've been enjoying the most is, the kid in me who never realized, like, oh my goodness, onions work with everything. Oh my goodness, garlic can go on everything. It makes everything taste better. Well, most things, but just there's so much to it. I could talk about food all day, I feel like, but it's so much fun being in the kitchen with my kids, because I feel like that was something that I probably would have loved. And in high school, they took out that class, And so if you weren't taught at home, you weren't taught at school, like, where are you going to learn those skills? Most of us just didn't have that opportunity. So that's one of the things, actually, I push a lot on the Dusty Sun videos, is to have men actually learn how to cook for themselves, for their partners, for their families, so that you can nourish your family, recognize what's actually going into those. I partner with Just Ingredients, who's huge on everything to be the most healthiest versions of themselves. I've got the Aqua True, which, trying to get better water even. It's just, it's wild how different the world is. Even looking at what cereal was when I was a kid versus what's in the cereal now, that ingredients matter, that the process matters, and that it's fun, and it's not just your wife's job to be the cook,
I dig that. I love that so much. And I can't wait to, clip so many parts of that and send it out to as many dudes as I can possibly find and be like, hey, maybe you should
step it up.
You should. Yeah.
Step it up because it's fun.
It
man.
is.
It's
not
honestly
just about
fun.
It's seen as like this responsibility of you have to do this now, and it's gonna be. It's just gonna be really painful. And man, my wife's always complaining about this. So why on earth do I want to do it? You know what I mean? And it's like, dude, it's not it. That's not it.
Yeah.
She's complaining because you're not experiencing this time together, this fun that you could be having, this enjoyment you could be having. And there are days, okay? It's not like every single day getting in the kitchen to cook food is just for fun. Like last night, I'm cooking up this chicken. Yeah, make it sound really great and awesome. And I cooked a great chicken. We just did. But like, it wasn't a moment of, I can't wait to have this amazing experience cooking this chicken with my kids. Dude, they were out playing. They were getting after it. And I was like, I just need to make this food so I can feed them. Like, it was an absolute necessity, but there are definitely days where we're getting, our kids in the kitchen. And yeah, I love that. Eric, this has been awesome, dude.
Mm-hmm.
You're the bomb. Love hanging out with you. Love talking with you. You're an inspiration to me for sure. And if you're out there and you don't follow Eric, that's crazy. You definitely need to. What I would say is let people know on the show that are listening and or watching, where can they find you? Where can they hit you up to learn more, ask more questions, or just find some inspiring or hilarious content? Where can people find you?
Gotcha. You can find me on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Instagram is the main. Girldad_E. Girl Daddy, that's me. Also have some things in the works that are going to be on the way. So make sure you follow, and we'll be working on it, man. We'll laugh together. We'll cry together. We will break generational curses. We will cook the best foods and love our wives the way they deserve.
I dig it, man.
I love that. Cool. Well, thanks for being on the show, Eric.
Thank you.
Have a good one, man. And with that, the girl dad, Eric, has left the virtual chat. We hung out afterwards.
Way too long. Talking about Christian hip hop, talking about books.
He had a comment before we hit record that has stuck with me, and he said, Morpheus. Because like his voice, and I found it so awesome. Anyhow.
We hope you liked today's conversation. Because I surely did.
I really enjoyed it a lot. It's definitely not the typical go through, the macronutrients of, a specific item of food that we may do here often. But man, I think it's some really important things we discussed. Definitely go hit up Eric on all his, channels. Look out for the things he's got coming.
Mm-hmm.
Just a super legit dude. Couldn't be more stoked to give him a platform to talk to you guys. So
100%.
Hey, if you liked this episode, definitely let us know in the comments. It matters. It helps us. Go in and leave a review on the podcast.
Rating or review or both.
There you go. If you want to support the podcast, you can also do that by checking out our Substack. We release things on there for you, and it's $8 a month. You can check that out. We've also got books for sale. They are to help you get into the real food game. Okay. Educational resources, books that we've created for you and your kids to elevate your understanding of nutrition and where food comes from. Find those on homegrowneducation.org. You can also follow us on Instagram. I'm at Joey Hazelmeyer. Elizabeth is at Liz Hazelmeyer and at homegrown_education. We've got a store that we sell awesome things. It's called Hazelmeyer Goods, shoptheH.com for people that, may not have the spelling capabilities that everyone in the world does. Anyhow, shoptheH.com.
Hazelmeyer is a hard word to spell.
It is hard to spell.
But we do own the domain hazelmeyergoods.com. And we knew that Hazelmeyer would never be spelled right. So we had it redirect to shop the H. I just think that's funny.
Anyways, go check it out. We got coffee, tea, soap, sourdough tools, all sorts of things on there to set you up to do things.
Ceramics, home goods. Yeah, we got some stuff.
ShopTheH.com, Substack, homegrowneducation.org, Instagram pages. I don't know.
That's it.
Get after it.